Detective Elias Varn had a mind sculpted by logic and molded by shadows. For 18 years, he solved cases that left others broken. Cold trails warmed in his hands, lies unraveled before his stare. In the department, they called him the Bloodhound. Victims' families called him Justice. Criminals never called him anything, because they were always caught. But one rainy Thursday night, that all changed. The scene was a grisly one, a warehouse by the docks, long abandoned except for rats and the echoes of secrets. A man had been found bound to a chair, mouth stuffed with paper, eyes wide open, frozen in eternal terror. His throat slit with surgical precision. But what chilled Elias more than the corpse was the evidence bag handed to him by the forensics tech. Inside it, a bloody fingerprint on a shard of broken glass. The fingerprint matched him. At first, Elias thought it was a mistake. Maybe a cross-contamination, or a corrupted scan. But the fingerprint was pristine, and it was found on a piece of glass driven into the victim's side, during the crime, not after. He stared at the image. The whorls, the ridges, the damning certainty of it all. That night, he didn't go home. Elias returned to the crime scene, alone. The warehouse seemed different now, less like a scene to analyze, more like a memory trying to surface. He felt something familiar in the scent of mildew and rusted metal. His flashlight beam landed on the bloodstain again. The chair. The angle of the cut. Something about it was ritualistic. Familiar. He shivered, though the air was still. Back at the precinct, he ran his own print comparison again. The same result. Then something more chilling came up. The same print had been found once before, 12 years ago, on a cold case no one had solved. Elias had worked on that case too. He needed answers. He needed to dig. But how do you investigate a murder when the first suspect is you? Elias began visiting old case files he thought he'd buried in his memory. One by one, he opened them like coffins, and each one stared back with something missing, something off. Victims with no known connections, but similar death methods. Precise wounds. Tied hands. Paper shoved down throats. It wasn't random. It was a pattern. Had he missed it? Or ignored it? He started to remember fragments, like static in his head. A man whispering in a hallway. A notebook with no words, only drawings. A face in a mirror that wasn't his, but moved like it was. Memory is a liar with a good poker face. He barely slept. When he did, he dreamt of blood under his fingernails, someone else's eyes in the reflection, a voice telling him to wake up. But when he did, it never felt like his own body. The next murder came 5 days later. Same M.O. Same eerie silence at the scene. Same fingerprint. His. He knew the department would be watching. He erased his digital trail, made copies of files, and stored them in places only he could find. Then he went underground, figuratively and literally. He moved into an old safe house used for sting ops, deep beneath a fake butcher shop. It smelled of meat and secrets. There, in the flickering light of a dying bulb, Elias pulled out a box he hadn't touched in 13 years. Inside, a leather-bound journal. No name. No author. Just symbols. Dozens of pages, all filled with the same pattern. A chair, a throat, an eye scratched out. A date was scribbled on the inside cover. March 3, 2013. That was the night he went missing for 36 hours. Everyone blamed stress. Elias had no memory of it. But now, something was unraveling. He found an address written on the back page. Burnt Hill Psychiatric Facility. Abandoned for years. Files sealed. He drove there in the dead of night. The building stood like a tombstone for broken minds. Graffiti covered the walls, but inside, some things had been left untouched. He pried open a file cabinet. Most folders were empty. But in the E section, he found it, Varn, Elias. Admission date, March 3, 2013. Discharge date, unknown. How could he have been admitted and not remember? Why was he discharged? And who signed the form, with his signature? Then he found a photo, grainy and torn. It showed him strapped to a gurney, eyes wide, mouth mid-scream. A man stood beside him with a syringe, face turned away. But something on the man's wrist caught Elias's eye. A tattoo. The same tattoo he'd seen on 3 of the past victims. Elias returned to the city a changed man. Every sound echoed louder. Every face looked suspect. He saw signs in everything. Conspiracies layered like rotten skin. And someone, something, was trying to erase him. At the precinct, someone had wiped his access to the database. Files gone. Case logs altered. He was being digitally erased. Slowly. Surgically. Was he chasing a killer? Or was he chasing himself? He broke into the morgue that night. He had to see the most recent victim again. He had to be sure. He pulled open the drawer. The corpse looked familiar. Then he saw it. The face was his. Or close to it. Same bone structure. Same scar above the left eye. But older. Paler. Dead. Then the lights shut off. Footsteps echoed. A voice whispered, "You're getting close, Elias. But are you sure you want to know?" Elias didn't flinch when the lights went out. He stood frozen, staring at the corpse that mirrored him with eerie precision. A match. But not an identical twin. A version. Slightly different, older, bruised in places he wasn't, a broken molar on the left side, which Elias still had intact. The drawer slammed shut on its own. A whisper rippled through the darkness. "You died here, Elias. You just didn't stay that way." He reached for his flashlight. It flickered violently before stabilizing. The room was empty, but something was wrong. The other drawers had been opened. All at once. 8 bodies. All looked like him. Different ages. Different wounds. One strangled. One burnt. One missing eyes. A wave of nausea hit him. He stumbled back, bumping into a steel table. The autopsy tools clattered to the floor like bone chimes. Were they clones? Doubles? Hallucinations? Or was he the copy? Elias fled the morgue. Rain fell like needles. He didn't go back to the safe house. Instead, he drove west, hours out of town, to visit the only person who ever believed in monsters, Dr. Astrid Lorne. She was a criminal psychologist who'd once told Elias something he laughed at. Some murderers don't hide in alleys or shadows. Some hide in people, like viruses. She opened the door with a revolver in hand. "You weren't supposed to come here," she said. "Why not?" "Because the last time you did, you didn't leave." She let him in. The walls were covered in newspaper clippings and red string, a collage of obsession. Pictures of crime scenes, sketches of symbols, and a list titled The Quiet Ones. Elias's photo was at the top. "What is this?" he asked, voice trembling. "You've been part of something," Astrid said. "Something ancient. Hidden. They infect people. Take parts of them. Memories, habits, voices. Leave fragments behind. You're not making sense." "I never do, until it's too late." She handed him a small recorder. "Play this when you're alone." He left before dawn. In the car, he hit play. Static. Then his own voice. "This is Elias. If you're hearing this, you're not the original anymore." His hands clenched the steering wheel. His throat dried up. "They call themselves the choir. They sing to you when you're vulnerable, when you're asleep, drugged, or broken. That's when they enter. You don't know they're there until they leave, or take everything." Then a scream, his scream. Then silence. He turned off the recorder and stared into the night. His face in the rearview mirror no longer felt like his. There were cracks in his memories now. Whole days he couldn't account for. Words he didn't remember writing in his own journals. One page, torn and taped back together, read, "Who were you before the first time you lied to yourself?" Elias went to the only place left with answers, the graveyard at Ridgevale, where no one had been buried in 20 years, but where he once remembered attending a funeral. It was the middle of the night, but he knew the path. Row 7. Stone 14. There it was. Detective Elias Varn. 1981 to 2013. The case he couldn't solve was himself. No coffin. Just a stone. His knees buckled. He laughed. Short, bitter, unbelieving. Then he heard humming. A child's voice. Behind him, a girl in a red coat stared from beneath a tree. Face pale. Hair drenched. "You're not supposed to be here yet," she whispered. Elias stood. "What do you mean, yet? You're still wearing the wrong face." She vanished. He didn't chase her. He couldn't. The next day, Elias hacked into the National Forensic Archive. He ran a pattern match not on fingerprints, but on voice recordings from police interviews over the last 15 years. Something odd emerged. 5 different suspects in 5 different states used the same phrase. "The choir always sings before the storm." He clicked one audio file. A man arrested in 2014. Accused of triple homicide. No motive. No history of violence. But the voice, it was identical to his own. Not similar. Exact. That night, a knock came at his motel door. He opened it cautiously. A woman stood there, tall, sharp-featured, dressed like someone from a government department that doesn't officially exist. She didn't introduce herself. She only said, "You're not the first Elias Varn I've spoken to." Then she handed him a file. Inside were photos. Dozens of them. All of him. Or versions of him. Some smiling. Some crying. Some dead. And one photo labeled, "Control Subject Varn, 0. Still active." He looked up, ready to demand answers, but the woman was gone. Vanished. No footsteps. No car outside. Just fog. And on the floor, one last photo had fallen from the folder. A blurry surveillance still. It showed Elias standing at a crime scene. But he hadn't been there. He was sure. He was somewhere else. But in the photo, he was smiling. The photo wouldn't leave Elias's hand. He stared at the frozen smile, the one he didn't remember. The photo was time-stamped a day before the most recent murder. He was somewhere else that day. Wasn't he? His memory felt thinner now. Like walking on a frozen lake in spring. Every step creaked. He checked out of the motel within minutes. Burned the photo. Changed his phone. Wiped his digital ID. In his gut, he knew someone was following him, and worse, someone might be using him. Elias returned to the city's darkest file, the choir case. Unofficially titled that by a few agents who died during the investigation. The victims all had something in common. Their mouths were stuffed with pages torn from books, often diaries, scriptures, personal writings. Words stolen from their souls. Most had no family, no connections. They were all forgettable. Like someone, or something, chose people who wouldn't be missed. He reread the notes left behind by a former profiler. They don't just kill. They erase. They silence. They infect. The final entry. If you hear them humming, it's already too late. Elias needed help. He found it in the unlikeliest place, a conspiracy forum buried in the deep web, known as the Quiet Room. Access required a phrase, echoes belong to no one. Once inside, he found an old thread titled, "The Choir Recruits Through Sleep." Posts dated back nearly 15 years. Users claiming to wake up in strange places. With memories that didn't match security footage. With dreams of being someone else. Some posted photos of strangers who looked just like them. Every single poster was now marked as account deleted. One user had left GPS coordinates in their final comment 5 years ago. Elias drove there. A farmhouse, burnt to its bones. But in the cellar, he found something untouched, a mirror, standing upright in the ashes. and scrawled in soot across the glass. "Welcome back." His reflection blinked. He didn't. Panic gripped him. He smashed the mirror. Nothing inside. But when he looked at the shards, his reflection still smiled in some of them. He stumbled out, dazed. But just beyond the ruins, someone stood in the field. A man. Same build. Same jacket. Elias called out, "Hey!" The figure didn't move. He stepped closer. But the man turned and walked calmly into the trees, and vanished. At the spot where he stood, Elias found a single item. A voice recorder. He pressed play. The message was short. Male voice. His own voice. "Stop looking. Start remembering." He spent that night in his car, dreamless. Or so he thought. He awoke at 3:14 a.m. in the back seat, shivering. On the inside of the windshield, someone had written with a fingertip, "Check the grave again." He knew exactly which one. Ridgevale. Row 7. Stone 14. He returned before dawn. The tombstone was there, but something was wrong. The grave had been disturbed. Fresh soil. A dug-up hole, but no coffin inside. At the bottom, a single item lay on its side. A mask, made of skin and leather, stitched crudely to match his face. Elias took it with shaking hands. Inside the mask's inner lining, a note had been sewn in with red thread. "You volunteered. Stop pretending." He left the cemetery barely breathing. He didn't know what scared him more. That someone was trying to be him, or that he had once agreed to it. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Text message. "We're almost ready for your final song." Below it, a live image. A woman, tied to a chair in a warehouse. He recognized her instantly. Dr. Astrid Lorne. The timestamp read, 10 minutes ago. He broke every speed law reaching the warehouse district. The same warehouse from the first murder. He burst through the door, gun drawn. It was empty. Chair still there. Rope discarded. No blood. Just a gramophone in the corner. Already playing. A haunting lullaby. He approached. A note lay beside it. "Turn around, Elias." He did. A man stood there, smiling. Same face. Same scar. Same eyes. "Now do you understand?" Elias raised his gun. But his hand wouldn't move. It shook violently. Then the figure spoke again. Same voice, identical tone. "You're not you anymore. You haven't been for years. You're just the one who figured it out too late." Then darkness. And a whisper. "The choir thanks you for your service." Elias awoke strapped to the same chair he had seen in crime scene after crime scene. The rope bit into his wrists, the grain of wood scraped his spine, and the smell of rust and blood clung to the air like an old song. He wasn't alone. A dozen figures stood in a loose circle around him. All wore his face. Some with scars, others emotionless masks, one even grinning ear to ear as if enjoying the pain like a meal. Then one stepped forward, the same figure from the warehouse. The first duplicate. Elias managed to growl. "Who are you?" The figure knelt beside him and whispered. "The better question, Elias, is, who were you before we borrowed you?" A projector flicked on. Against the cold wall, footage from police stations, body cams, interrogations. In every clip, Elias was there. Or someone who looked exactly like him. Solving murders. Giving orders. Sometimes, standing beside the camera, watching silently. Elias thrashed. "No. I chose this life. I'm real. I am." The duplicate laughed. The circle closed in. All the Eliases chanted softly. "The choir remembers. The choir remains." He shut his eyes. Flashes surged behind his lids, memories not his own. Hands strangling someone. Words written backward on glass. blood washing down a sink while a radio hummed the same lullaby he'd heard in the warehouse. One whisper stood out. "You said yes, Elias. We just took our time collecting." When he opened his eyes again, he was alone. Unbound. The chair empty. The projector off. The figures gone. But on the wall behind him, a message painted in blood. "You are now the last verse." And under it, a badge. His badge. "Your role." But the name on it didn't say Elias Varn. It read, "Control Subject Varn 1, active." Elias staggered outside. The sun was rising, but it felt wrong. The city skyline was twisted, unfamiliar. People passed him on the sidewalk. No one recognized him. Then he saw the newspaper headline in the box beside the corner store. Detective Elias Varn found dead, suicide confirmed. Note references, the choir, and the date. Tomorrow's. He stared at his reflection in the glass of the vending machine. He blinked. The reflection didn't. He ran. Alleys. Streets. Nothing felt right. His memory tore open like a bag too full of needles. In a tunnel beneath the metro, he stopped. There was humming. Faint. A child's voice. He turned. The girl in the red coat from the cemetery stood at the far end. "You made it this far," she said. "Now it's time to remember who we really are." Elias took a step forward. "Who are we?" The girl smiled sadly. "Not who. What?" Behind her, one by one, faces emerged from the dark. All his. Hundreds. Thousands. And each whispered the same final line. "We are the reason you never forget the worst things you've done." Cut to black. A single whisper remains.